Let's jump right in and start a little DarkRadiant editing. Learn a few shortcuts, make a couple rooms, we'll see what we can do. Just open DarkRadiant. And that's maximized again because remember I deleted that DarkRadiant folder, so it had to recreate it with the default settings again. So I'll bring that back and once again stretch it out to the screen size we're working with here and pull that back. Now this view is the default view. It has one large editing window. You can change whether this is the XY view here or the XZYZ. Right here, this button switches between top, front, and side. But I prefer to have a separate view for each one. So the very first thing I'm going to do is go up to the View menu and go down to Window Layout. And I prefer Split Pane. Alright, there's a 3D window up here, a top window here, and the side and front down here. You can resize them. Something like that, that, and that. So I have the largest area on the top down, and then the sides. Now you can't see anything over here because we haven't built anything yet. You can experiment with some of the other window layouts and see what you like, but this is the one I prefer. It's the one I'm going to be doing all the tutorials with. The next thing we're going to do is save the blank map. Right now it's unnamed map and it has a little asterisk. That means it's unsaved. Anytime you do any work on your map, the asterisk will show up, and that's your clue that you haven't saved it, that there is something that would be lost if you just closed it. File, we're going to save. Since it's the first time we're saving, like any program, you have to choose a name and a location. Later on, you could just hit save or the little save icon, and it'll just save it without asking you the name. Let's look at this folder first. If we click Browse for other folders, you'll notice it's in Games, Doom 3, Dark Mod, Maps. On my computer, it's the F drive. That's the default location, and that's what I recommend sticking with for now. Later on, you might decide to put it in your own folder that has your name, or especially later on as you actually start developing a mission, you're going to set up a folder for that mission. But for now, as we just practice with DarkRadiant, we'll just stick our files in the default maps folder. That's going to help us as we test our maps and compile them, because it's easier to type the location because it's already in the default folder. We don't need to browse the folders, that was just to show you. And let's call it Komag Test 01. You can call it whatever you want. Save. Alright, now this is the full path and name of the map, and there's no asterisk. As soon as I do anything or build anything, an asterisk will show up. So whenever you're editing and you've been looking at your map for a while, you can't remember if you've actually done anything in the past minute and whether you should save it or not, just look up here and see if there's an asterisk or not. And that'll help you remember to save your game. If you see that, save it. If you see it, save it, save it, save it. Save your map all the time. If you noticed in the Save menu, there's a couple more options. Save As if you want to change the name, and Save Copy As is the most genius one. That keeps your current map as the same name, but it just saves a copy of it as another name without changing the current name of the map you're working on. So let's try one. Save Copy As, and it's pre-filled with the name Komag Test, and I hit Enter. Now if you see here, the map we're working on is still Komag Test 01, but it saved a copy of it as Komag Test. So while you're editing maps, you can continue to up the number, save as Komag Test 02 after you've done a few major changes, then more changes, save as Komag Test 03, and then later on when you're done for the evening, save as Komag Test 04, and save copy as Komag Test with the same name. Then when you go to run tests of your map, you can just use that same name without having to always change the name. You could even set up a shortcut for it. And you can set up scripts that refer to the map name. And you don't always have to change the scripts because you saved a copy as the same name, Komag Test. But while you're working, you want to save as incremental numbers so that you have snapshots of your map in case something goes wrong and you have to go back a couple numbers without losing all your work. So let's begin. First of all, in the 2D views, hold right click and move the mouse, and that moves the map around. Hold right click and move to the right, it pulls the map to the right. Move left, it pulls the map left. Up, down, right, left, center, let go. Very simple. Same here. If I click down on the side view, right click and hold, move up, down, left, right, back to the left, and let go. Let's start by making a cube. If you'll notice the grid lines, some are darker than others. You can adjust the grid, but right now we'll leave it. It's nice to follow the grid lines. It helps your mapping be simpler and cleaner. So I'm going to start on the dark grid line up here, left click and hold, and then pull the mouse down to the right. And I'm just going to line up the red lines on the grid lines, and then let go of the left mouse button, and a cube has been made. Now if we want to see if the line is right on the line, we can zoom in. That's the mouse wheel. If you scroll forward on the mouse wheel, forward, 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 it's zooming in. If I pull back, 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 it's zooming out. But it zooms into the very center. So let's right click over here and hold, pull it down to the right and let go. Then this is about in the middle here. Then I'll scroll in, mouse wheel forward, 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 forward. We could see this wasn't really on the line. So in order to fix that, let's go up to the grid, and we see that it's on grid 1. Really what I want to do is start it on grid 8. The shortcut is the number 4 key, but we could just select it here. And that's increments of 8. And there you see, these are increments of 8 now, and that's a little more broad to make our building cleaner at the beginning. And this is not on that grid. So I'm going to scroll out by mouse wheel back, 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 right click and hold and drag it up. In order to snap your brushes, what's currently selected, to the current grid, it's Control G. But before I do that, let's zoom back in so we can watch it snap. Let's pull it down, zoom in a little, zoom in, there, we can see it's off, Control G. There. So I hit Control and held it, hit G and let go of Control, and that snapped it. It was very close, so it popped it right over. Oh look, there's an autosave. One of the preferences to set up how frequently it autosaves. I recommend leaving autosave on, but you can change the frequency if you like. I leave it as the default. It seems pretty good. It's every 5 or 10 minutes, something like that. So let's pull this over, zoom out. Now we know it's snapped to the grid of 8. It was snapped to grid 1. When it was off a little bit, it was off exactly 1, because when I drew it, the grid was on 1. But I want to start it with it on 8. We made a cube. We can't see it. That's because in the 3D view, we're inside the cube. This is the camera, this little blue thing. It happens to be right on the axis, the XY, so it looks like it's all a bunch of lines all together. The easiest way to control moving where the camera is in the 3D view, right click and let go, and then as I move my mouse left and right, you can see that little V coming out of the camera over in the map view, turning left and right. As I move my mouse up and down, you can see those V's moving up and down in the side views, on the map side views. Then it's the arrow keys that control the movement. So I'm going to push the down arrow key to back out of the cube. Down. There I am. And I'll go a little further. Down. Now if I look around, you can see it's the side of the cube. If I look down and go backwards, I'll go up, flying upwards, backwards. Now I can look over and I'm up higher. I'm looking down at the cube off to the side there. Now I right click again, and now I'm not in the movement mode anymore. I can come back to the map. Let's zoom it out, and you can see the camera's way over here. Let's zoom this one out. You can see it's up high over here looking sort of down at the cube. And let's zoom this one out. It's up high over here looking down this way. Now let's say we want to make this cube not as wide. What we do is we go outside where the cube is up here, left click and hold, and you see that little blue dot? That means that side of the cube is now being manipulated. And move down. That pulls the wall down. Then let go. As you saw over here, the cube got smaller. Now let's click on the side over here, left click and hold, and pull that wall to the right to make the room longer that way. Right. And then let go. And you can see it pulled longer that way. Now if you notice this little spot here that looks like it's cut off, that's the far view being cut off. Let's pull this to the right more. Left click, hold, pull to the right. Now you see it's very much cut off. That cutoff plane helps the rendering to handle complicated views. You can set the distance that reaches out to. You can set it to be farther away or closer, or you can turn it off completely. And it's this icon right here. Cubic clip the camera view. It's pushed in right now. If I go up here and toggle it, then that turned it off and we see the whole thing. If there were a lot of other things further away back here, they would have just shown up. But let's turn it back on. Now it's back on. Now if I right click, I can look around. I press forward to zoom in closer, and you see the far side of the cube showed up again because the camera is closer to it now. It's inside that far clip plane distance. So that's useful if you have a very complicated scene, complex geometry in your map, and if you're getting low frame rates in the editor. But if you have a really beefy computer, you could turn that clip off so you can always see everything you're building, or you can extend the range of it. But for now, we'll just leave it. One other thing we will adjust now, though, is the Update Views option. And what that is, for instance, if I right-click here and look, and as I move forward, you see the camera, see the little, it's like a little Pac-Man thing. It's flying around. I'm going back, left, right. This is using the arrow keys on your keyboard. You see that little camera thing moving around on the map views there, on the 2D views. That taxes the system to be able to see that movement, because it's updating this and it's updating all these all at the same time. So I prefer to have that off. Hit P for preferences. Under ortho view, uncheck update views on camera movement and click OK. So now when we go back over to the 3D window and right click, when we move around, you don't see the little V's moving in the map views. As we fly around and move forward and back, they aren't moving around. Right click to stop that. As soon as I do anything over here, this is going to jump to where it really is. I think it's over here. So I'm going to right click and move the map a little. There, see? That's where it really is. I move that a little, move that a little. That's where it is now. It just didn't update it while I was flying. And that really speeds up the system a lot for me and for a lot of you out there. This is the setting you're going to want. You're going to want to turn off the update views, update the camera view thing. So we have this long drawn out rectangle here. Let's make it a little taller. So let's zoom in a little. Left click and hold, pull it up, let go. Now we want to texture this cube. All it is the shader not found texture, sort of the default editor texture, kind of like Jorg in Dromed. What we want to do is hit T for textures. That's the texture browser, and we'll pull that up. I actually like to pull it over here and make it bigger. Of course, there's nothing here right now. It's totally empty. First, we got to go to the Media tab, open up the textures, come down to Dark Mod. These are all Doom 3 textures here. But under Dark Mod, we'll just grab a few textures. Let's go in the Stone folder, Brick, Brown Blocks. It's grabbed already just by selecting it. Old Dirty Bricks, okay, fine. Red Worn Bricks, fine. That's enough bricks. Let's get some flat rocks. How about rough marble? Let's get some wood. Some old grainy wood, okay. Rough gray wood, fine. Worn, weathered, maybe some metal. Some flat metal, copper, silver. Okay, that's enough. So back over to textures. Anything we select is there. I actually like to have 4 textures wide in my view. It's just a handful of textures here. Now this brush is still selected with the red dotted outline. As soon as we click on a texture, everything will turn to that. We can see there's a texture. It's still lit up red from the highlight, from being the selected. You can see the texture is on this cube. And if we just hit T, that makes the texture browser go away. Now a cube is pretty boring, so let's make it a room. The easiest way to do that to start off with is this Make Room button. Not the hollow button, the Make Room button, because we want to make an empty room the size of the cube, so the walls will be nudged out a little so that the interior is the size of the current cube. Before I click that, just pay attention to where these lines are. What will happen is it'll make walls outside where the current line is. Let me zoom in a little. The walls will be out here. And out here to the left, the ceiling will be up a little and down a little. You can probably see it better over here. Okay, I'm going to click Make Room. Click there. Now you can see it's 6 flat brushes. The 4 walls, the ceiling, and the floor. And inside is a hollow room, the size of the old cube. So we go in there, we're inside the room here, in this space. And you can see in the corner how the brushes line up. They just touch on the inside edge. They don't overlap any. And that's the cleanest way of construction. Now, if nobody's going to see the brushes overlapping, it wouldn't do a whole lot of harm. So you could do that, but then you're going to have texturing issues. Sometimes your texture will have a specific pattern that you want to go from the inside to the edge of the wall, just one copy of the pattern over to the other edge. So just as a rule, try to build like this, where the edge of the wall is what you see, and that's where the wall actually stops. It doesn't go over further to overlap other walls. It's just going to help your texturing later on. It looks a little neater in the editor sometimes later on when you have a more complicated map. It's going to help you see what's going on just because you've built neat and clean the whole way. Now we have 6 brushes selected. To deselect everything, hit Escape. Now you can see the texture more for the real color that it is. Just a dark greenish gray stone, but it's everywhere. We don't want that everywhere. To select a brush, when you're not in 3D movement, in the 3D view, hold Shift, then left click. And see, I clicked on the floor. The floor is selected. Here you can't tell if that's the floor or ceiling, but on the side view you can see you've got the floor. By the way, one more movement in the 3D view. Instead of hitting down arrow to move back and up arrow to move forward, you can use the mouse wheel to scroll. Scroll back, scroll forward, and it jumps really fast. Scroll, scroll. I use that all the time to move really quickly around the map. There's other tricks and shortcuts too on the map views, which I'll show you a little later. But for now, you can just use the basics. Okay, we selected the floor, and we want to give that a different texture. So T for textures. There goes another autosave. Let's make the floor, we'll put worn wood. Escape to deselect. There's the floor. It's wood. And let's make the ceiling, well, let's just do silver, even though that's metal. So as we go outside, we can see the whole brush is painted, even though the outside you won't see because you're only inside the room. But it doesn't matter. Now we want to add a second room. Let's close the texture browser. You can close it here or just hit T again. We could come over here and build a block, but you see how thin it is? Because the last thing we had selected was that little ceiling, and it was that thin. So we drag it underneath and pull it down. Now if I kept pulling down until I went off the editor, it'll zoom real big. I'll show you. Pull down, down, down. Whoa! Look, it went really tall. Let's zoom out. Look how tall that went, all the way down to there. It scrolls really fast. If you go off, it starts scrolling and pulling it really far. So just beware. Let's put it back up to there. Okay. It also is the same texture as the last brush you worked with, so it happens to be the texture of the ceiling. We want the room to be the height of the air inside the room because we're going to click this Make Room button. While it's all selected, let's turn the texture back to that brick. We'll put the floor back to that wood, and then the ceiling back to the silver. Now you couldn't see it, but this time to unselect the floor, and as I'm about to unselect the ceiling, instead of hitting escape, I'm just going to shift click it. The same way I selected it, shift click, shift click. Sometimes that's a good way to do it because you only want to unselect one thing. If I have all 4 walls selected, then I can just shift click that one and the other 3 are still selected. Escape unselects everything. Now to select multiple things like you just saw me do, just hold shift and click lots of things. Shift, click, 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 click. Alright, those are all selected. Escape unselects them all. Now we have 2 rooms here. You can see there's just a space between them. There's no connection. What we want to do is make a little tiny hallway right there. We need to cut open the walls and put a little hallway in between. There's a few ways you could go about that. I'm just going to do one way. In the overhead view, what we want to do is cut here and build some little walls in between. Over here, it's this one called the clipper. It's the clipping tool. If you select that, now you're going to draw spots. And you can draw up to 3 spots. You have to do at least 2. It's going to create a plane. And then you can cut, and it's going to slice anything that's selected along that plane. So if that's a little confusing, just watch what happens. I'll put a dot there. It's dot 0. I'll put a dot down here. It's dot 1. And it has made a plane. The only parts of the plane where brushes are these two little thin spots. If I zoom in close, you can see it's got a line, a dotted line right there, and it continues down here. It's nothing in here because there's no brush in there, but there and there, it's going to get cut. To do the cut, you hit enter, but it's going to delete the side that's glowing. Now if I come around to this side, see, it's not glowing blue. Come around to this side, it's glowing blue. So that means this side of the brush, of that wall, and this side of that wall, they're going to get deleted. Now I don't want to delete them, I just want to cut them. That is shift enter. Not just enter, but shift enter. So shift enter. Those are cut. Now there's not just 2 brushes selected, there's 4 brushes selected. 2 over there and 2 over there. I'm still in clipper mode. If I go to move the brushes around, it's just going to draw dots like that. Let's go back to resize mode right here. Now to go in and out of clipper mode, the quick way is just hit X. X to go in, X to go back out. You'll notice this gets selected and then goes back. X, X. So if I select that side and that side, now I can pull the wall over and create an opening. So let's do that. I'll go on the side here, select it, and pull them both at the same time. Just peel them back and open a hole in the wall. And now we're in this room. We can see over into that room there. But if you step out through this hallway here, you're going to fall down into infinity. Ah! What we need to do is create a little piece of floor in between. So select this floor and hit space bar. That creates a copy, and it automatically moves the copy over a little bit so that you don't accidentally have 2 of the same thing in the same space. Now to move a brush around, you click somewhere inside the brush and then move it, and it pulls the whole brush around. Remember, when we clicked outside, it changes the size as we move it. Click inside, it moves it around. So move it down so that the corner is where this little hallway is supposed to go, and then resize it, shrink this side down, pull this side down so that it touches the other 2 floors and is right in the hallway. And there it is. Very easy. Now let's do the same for the wall. Select this wall, space to copy it, and let's line it up. If you select in a corner of the brush, you can move it both dimensions, wider and taller. If you select on the side, then you can't move it wider, only taller. If you select on this side, you can only move it wider, not taller. So let's just make it a thin wall on that side. You can see it fits right in there. Now we don't want it to go all the way to the ceiling. We don't want a tall hallway. We want a little hallway that's only a man size. On one of these side views here, pull the height of it down. 96 is good. Now when we copy this one, we can just pull the copy over to the other side. It already fits. By the way, since we were in side view, it adjusted that one over and down. So we want to nudge it back up. There we go. We need to have a little piece of ceiling for this hallway. We're not going to have that silver ceiling. We're going to use the same brick. So let's copy that and move it up, pull it over big, pull the bottom up flat, and there's a little flat piece of ceiling. There's our little hall, but we got to seal up these holes up here in the wall. Let's take one of these little pieces, copy it, pull that up, and then move it over, pull it wide, push it flat, and then from this room you can see that's blocking. Now you see that? See that little fuzziness there in the 3D view? That's Z fighting. That's because this little ceiling piece on the hallway, I forgot to pull it back down so it lines up. Oh, I accidentally moved the wall piece too because they're both selected. So I'll unselect that and then I just have the ceiling and move it back. Okay, now it's lined up. Let's pull that extra little wall, copy it. Oops, I accidentally resized it down to nothing. Put it back, pull in the middle of it, move it over, and there we go. We're all set. There's the little ceiling that goes below and through the hallway, and a piece of wall here, and a piece of wall here. Okay, we have 2 rooms with a little hallway in between. You can see the little hallway piece right there in the 2 rooms. And we'll stop for there for now. Go ahead and click save, and we're good for now.